Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Akron Public Schools Legal Contracts and Policy Committee meeting. We will start by, is there anyone to address the committee? Anyone to address the committee? Okay, if not, we will, I lost my train of thought. we will go over the approval of the minutes, I'm sorry. Any questions on the minutes from last meeting? Any questions on the minutes from last meeting? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on to Ms. Carter.
All right, thank you, Board Member Chair Bruce Alexander. Thank you, Member Autry, Member Harrison, and Member Molinar, and Superintendent. Today we are going to review the hard work that the city and APS has been working on as it relates to the facilities handbook, our CLC handbook, trying to make it more accessible to our community. And so we've been working really hard, or the city and YSS and APS have been working hard with putting this handbook together to make it user-friendly. And so as it relates to some of the changes and the things that we're looking for approval on at the next board meeting is going to be presented to you. And so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods and others from the city of Akron, and also Deborah Folk, who's with APS. And so so Danico, you're going to come up first? Okay, so come on up. And as you come up, if you could please just introduce yourself and what you do for the city, and then.
Thank you. Easy segue. Thank you. Good afternoon. So I am Danico Buckley Knight, and I serve as the Youth Opportunity Strategist for the City of Akron Mayor's Office. I'm the Youth Opportunity Strategist for the City of Akron, but I also play a couple of other hats. I'm a parent who has 4 kids in our Akron Public Schools district. I'm also a varsity football coach at East High School, and I also represent the Hoop for Coop nonprofit initiative. So access to CLCs is a huge kind of priority for me on behalf of the city and all of those kind of facets. So why do we want to improve CLC? One of the biggest things is this is a response of listening to the community. Our residents have advocated for quite some time to have an increase in equitable access to our CLCs. And also in the space of, prevention of violence, we believe that expanding our out-of-school time network and having spaces that are safe, such as our CLCs, will give our kids an opportunity to thrive in the out-of-school time. But this is just the beginning. This is not the end. We have made some recommendations on improvements, which you'll hear a little bit about today, but this is just the beginning. I want to be clear that this is the beginning, not the end. So some of the things that we've done is we've gathered challenges and solutions from 70+ community-based organizations, and ultimately what we want is for the revised procedure to be clear and transparent, to eliminate barriers, and to expand access. So with me today, on behalf of Youth Success Summit, we have Executive Director Rachel Tecca. We also have Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods. On behalf of the City of Akron Recs and Parks, we have Jeff Corvia. And on behalf of the City of Akron's Mayor's Office, we have Rochelle Wardell, who is our Health and Education Strategist. And lastly, who I would like to pass the mic to is, on behalf of Akron Public Schools, Deborah Falk.
Afternoon, Chairman Autry, members of the board, and Superintendent. At this time, we'd like to reflect on where we were. So on the left-hand side is the original Facilities Administrative Handbook, and we actually put this together in 2001. This is based on some board policies, and I will be honest with you, it is still inactive right now. So as we've done our work over almost the last 2 years, what you see on the right is the proposed draft. You have a copy of the presentation with the new draft handbook in the folders that we have given you. So we wanted to just tell you the timeline why this was so very, very important that we should move forward on a revision that also allowed us to put in some place right now some updates we've even done internally. So that's why now it's circled 2001. One of the things that we wanted you to see on this particular part of the presentation is on the left side is the old handbook, items that we found where we had some differences between the city of Akron. It was a 26-page handbook that APS had. We had some many do's and don'ts. It lacked clarity on who is responsible to remove guests not following rules. There was no checklist when exiting. There were different fees between APS and the city as we started to use the CLCs, and many add-on fees charged based to the rent. You will find in the new handbook what has been created, and the accomplishments that we have done is one, we created one set, clear, transparent set of procedures that will be used by everybody here, whether it's APS and the city for community usage. We have streamlined the new document to 11 pages and drastically cut the number of words you have to read to 1,399. We have a simple set of procedures organized by sections in a user-friendly language, and we owe a lot of that to our team that worked diligently to make this easy to read and easy to follow. The language is clear on the renter having the responsibility and authority to remove and/or ban participants or spectators from their rental events. And that was one of the questions that came out of a series of community meetings that we held. We established a checklist to help renters with the responsibilities to end at the end of the rental so that they know that they're putting the facility back together the way it should be found. We have one set of common fees between APS and the city, and we're down to 2 group rates, including one that increases the transparency and consistency, and we will go over that in a few minutes. And then the last thing is we had a significant reduction to the list of add-on fees, and those are only going to be charged to high-end soundboard users, theater equipment, things that are not normally used for a typical rental. And at this time, I am turning this over to Rochelle Wardell from the City of Akron.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for giving us time today. The last time that we came before this body, we presented you an idea of 3 different groups which would have 3 different approaches to fees. We heard from you, and we also heard from members of our city council that that maybe was a bit too much. It was confusing, and we ought to even streamline it further. And so we put some ideas into calculations, and after some formulating, we decided that really we should just have 2 groups, nonprofit and not nonprofit. And so for Group A, which includes organizations who have formal partnership agreements with the city or with the schools, and for all nonprofit organizations, and for the city and the schools, the base rate or the hourly rate to rent the building or the places within the building, those fees would be waived. For all other renters, we would come to an agreement where all renters would have the same set of fees for those hourly rates. So those are for-profit organizations, those are churches who are renting the space, for nonprofits who are doing fundraisers, those folks would be charged an hourly rate. When we put these numbers to paper, we came to this agreement. As you know, when renting a community learning center, if you are renting a high school, those rentals go through APS. If you're renting middle schools or elementary schools, those go through the city. There were times when that didn't exactly work out and different fees were charged, and that was confusing to the public. So we want to make sure that we do not do that, and we came to an agreement whereas everyone will be charged the same rate no matter if they rent through the city or if they rent through the schools. When we made these changes and we decided to make all nonprofits for free, we've calculated based on last year's rentals that the schools and the city will incur an extra $16,000 of cost. Roughly $12,000 for APS and $4,000 for the city. So we will open this up to questions, which I'm sure there are several. But first, I want to just make it very clear that, like Danico said, this is the beginning and not the end. Today's update represents a procedural milestone, but we understand that this is not the finish line, it's just the foundation. Equally important, we recognize that all of the issues that we've heard from the community about access to CLCs are not just procedural, they are cultural. It's about making our buildings truly welcoming and responsive to all. And we are committed to carrying this out and addressing as many issues as possible, not through just tech fixes, but through trust building. So we're working on centralized contacts, increasing access to non-traditional hours and non-APS spaces, making insurance more affordable. We'll work to continue to reduce cost burdens, and we are soon to begin conducting rental denial audits so that we really understand better we're better able to analyze access to our buildings. So, because we believe that community partners and our community partners, both yours and ours at the city, they're working really hard to make sure that our youth have excellent opportunities and that they're safe, and we want to support our youth. And so our systems should work just as hard as our community partners are to make sure that we support our youth. Now I'll turn it over to Deborah, who will field your questions.
Okay. Are there any questions from any of the board members? Reverend Harrison.
I have two questions. And I know I'm happy to hear that this is the beginning, because I know we're not going to get every question over time. So my first question is dual use. So I want to use the auditorium, but there's a group that wants the cafeteria at the same time. Is that possible?
Yes, and we do that all the time. So I'll give you an example. Over the weekend, we recently had a city event in the auditorium at Buchtel that the city staffed, and we had an internal car wash for one of the fundraisers for the football team that was held in the back, and it was obviously a school event. So this happens quite frequently.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that example. Can we take a look at fundraising? And so when we're looking at students in Akron, when we look at, let's say, a Pee Wee football, and they are nonprofit, but they are raising funds for their organization in whatever event they may have, whatever they're doing. If they're Akron-based, there are students, even though they are raising funds, it's for their program. So can we take a look at that? I know it may not, see how that works. where they can get Group A? Can we take a look at that?
That was certainly part of our conversation, and we want to explore that further. We will be working closely with the YSS group, and actually over the last 2 weeks, we've had several entities that have come forward to us, and I actually provided to Director Teka an organization last Friday and gave her and him the email address to contact them so they could go through the YSS process, because I think that's really where we get the understanding of who's part of the groups, because it's very interesting when you look at actually who participates. They may certainly be a large group of our students that live within our district. They are also groups that come in where many of the majority of the participants are not. So we've had extensive conversations over how to do this. And I'm sure we can proceed to look at that as we go through this process.
And one follow-up. The Group B, what we have talked about with the AAU, that puts, this is for Mr. Buckley Knight and Ms. Elliott McWilliams-Woods, Dr. Elliott McWilliams-Woods. That Group B is what makes it important, what we talked about, as far as we want to be the one to do Group B as far as tournaments or whatever. Because if Group B is out there, then someone else will capitalize on that. And I think that financially is where the school and the city needs to be.
Co-chairs, Mr. Alexander, Mrs. Autry, nice to see you both. Thank you for having us here. Yes, I think for the AAU teams, and that is, we know that the leadership development and all those essential skills that youth are developing by participating in those is enormous. Yeah. If we don't do something in this community for equity purposes, then we're going to have huge differentiation with families being able to participate. As you know, as I know as a former athlete, those travel teams and competitive teams, the higher up you go, they get incredibly expensive. So we want to be able to support that and bring the cost down for families as much as we can. Linked to your first question about looking at fundraisers, we feel very strongly about needing to look at fundraisers especially for nonprofit organizations, because they're not paying themselves with that. That's going straight back to the youth. And we do have that on our list of what's next. And so in that last slide of we're not done, that's in that list to say, let's get to this point where at least we have the same rates being charged between the APS and city. Nonprofits get the waiver on that standard rate. And then we'll look right away to see, so how many organizations now are getting more access, and then how many of those are fundraisers where we could look at that and bring that cost to you next. So we see that as kind of the next wave.
Okay.
And the only thing I'll add, Pastor Harrison, is it was definitely intentional to make sure that as many voices like in that sports and wellness field had the ability to kind of give us their insight. So there was representation from like AAU volleyball as well as AAU basketball, just to kind of like make sure that the rates that we're proposing is actually, something that's doable, that they can still, implement whatever that AAU tournament is, but also still be able to like cover the costs. So we thought that the rate for both the city and Akron Public Schools for those for-profits, we thought that rate was kind of aligned with some of those organizations who said that they would be willing to pay that rate.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. Autry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I have to thank each and every member of this team who put all of this together. This has to be probably the most mentioned issue to me since I've been on this board and even before I've been on this board. And so it's long overdue. And so this comprehensive handbook is just the coming together to make this make sense, more sense. It's so appreciated. So I just want to thank you. And I'm happy that the work is ongoing, because I know there are things that we're probably not seeing that will arise. So my questions are around like parking lots and yards, fees for that. That's one question. And then I'm thinking about these informal groups, like alumni, who just come together every so often. They're not a for-profit or nonprofit. They just want to maybe come and tour, or maybe even have a meeting at the school. Or I'm thinking about those little small groups, the crochet club. They're not making money. So where do they fall in all of this?
I'll answer the last one first and then go backwards, because I'll probably have to have Deborah come up about the parking and your first question. For a lot of the groups, like the crocheting and the knitting and the grandma's group and all of those, they have been and have been really channeled towards the community centers, because right now there's no youth attached to that, there's no insurance requirement for that. So that's the easiest route to go to the city community centers versus the community learning centers. You saw on the slide that insurance is one of the ones that we're tackling next in terms of the topic of insurance and digging. We've met with insurance representatives. We've had a small committee for a year or so. We're just not at the place of offering a recommendation yet. So we're still going to work on that. But right now, because of that insurance requirement, it's best, and we've been able to accommodate all of those requests for the small groups that don't have insurance, because they're not a real, they're not a formal organization registered with the state. So that's the first question. For parking, you asked?
Parking lots,
Yeah, parking lots.
And I'm thinking about the parade,
Okay.
because we don't need buildings, we just need to
Right.
line up. And
Parking
park
lots, we certainly do schedule through FMX. We do not charge a rental fee. If it is an outside organization, all we ask is that we get a certificate of liability coverage naming the district as additionally insured, and you also are advised that you park at your own risk. So therefore, if I hit your car, it's between you and I, or if some damage comes to your vehicle while on our property, we're not liable. And we've done that for years. We've done it with, as an example, large groups such as Stan Hewitt. We've done it with city use as well. And we recently are working right now, in fact, this upcoming weekend, we will be using this parking lot here for a downtown parking event for pop-up art show, and they came. It's on our schedule, so we know that they're on there, and they've given us the required liability coverage. It's easy to do. And then you asked about green spaces. They're often very much the same. We just want them to tell us that they're going to be, and I'll use Betty Jane's very large area outside it. We just want to know, as an example, that I-9 Sports wants to be there. They put it in our FMX so that we know they're on their site. They also could give us a liability coverage, but they don't get any access, so there's no charge for that. We have, in that occasion, though, also advised that particular organization one time that we needed to cancel their event because the church across the street was hosting a funeral, and the funeral was going to impact the need to use our parking lot. So we try to do a cooperative effort around our buildings as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one follow-up. And can you speak to the alumni groups? I know you spoke to the small groups, but alumni.
Alumni groups, we try to encourage them to be in the schools at a time in which we are actually on site. So that way we can open up the school. They will fill out just a FMX so we know to let the custodian and the principal know that somebody is touring, unless they want to be on a Saturday or something in which the building is opened, and then, because it's not normally open, we have provided that information to the city, but many times, because it's our own alumni, they would prefer for us to do it, and we try to charge just a minimal custodial fee of $38 an hour, just to help cover some of the cost of the person on site. But we try to be very, very mindful of what's needed. One of the sites we recently lost, though, is many of those events were wanted to be held at the Central Howard Building, which is no longer under our jurisdiction, and we have advised them to talk to this Akron U department that oversees the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do want to just mention one thing, just to tag on to Deborah's. In the Group A, there is a third bullet there. Let me make sure I have the wording exactly right. The program-related partnership with agreement with the APS or the city, those are organizations. I think the alumni seems to fit into that. If that's that's an alumni organization of Bookdale, of East, of Ellet, that is a formal part of, that can also, we could look at a partnership type agreement to solidify that, versus someone who just says, hey, let's get a group of friends together and, alumni. If it's a formal alumni group, which we have incredibly active groups in this district, we are blessed that way, that can also be housed under that third bullet. So we can look at that more carefully to make sure that's clear, that that's an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I ask a question? Do you have another, Harrison? Go ahead, Reverend Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How about a dispute resolution? We're in between Group A and Group B, and
Yeah.
So how do we manage that?
Yeah, right now, we have the 2 points of contact depending on the time of day that so we have Jeff in Corvia if you're renting in the evening or on the weekends, and then Deborah Folk's office for that after-school time, and then some of the complicated events that are going to need the technology and the auditoriums, then the school district is involved. Right now, that you go to those 2 points of contact to dispute any agreement or where you ended up in A or B. But our committee has talked about doing that. Rochelle Wardell mentioned an audit this year to look at how are we doing in terms of these new procedures. We don't want to stand in front of you, say, here's the new procedures, and then they don't actually get implemented, in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. And we have talked about establishing some formal process. We haven't come up with what that would be yet. We'd like to get these going, and we'd like to do the audit to look at anyone who was rejected. Let's make sure we're following the procedure, and then maybe we can figure out a way to have a small group or some way, or a form that gets submitted that gets viewed by a few people. So we will definitely put that on our next list, because we promised to be back with you. I think Mrs. Outley has been probably the biggest champion for access of CLCs over the years. So I can't imagine that this will be our one and only, time once we get this handbook. We'll want to keep honing and making sure that we get this right. Yeah. We've been talking about this for too many years. We got to get it right this time.
Thank you. Great to hear that we'll be looking at the spirit of the agreement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Dr. Moore, do you have any questions? Okay, I do. I think one question was answered. I was going to ask about insurance, and I think that's already been answered.
Yes.
Because I know that's a big piece, and a lot of organizations didn't have the finances to get that insurance. I know it's expensive, so I'm glad we're going to be working on that. And did I hear that churches pay a fee or something? Okay, so even though they're considered nonprofit, they still pay a fee?
Yeah, the churches are in that group B because they do collect money, and that's each Sunday. when they're using the facility, so it falls within the fundraiser fee structure, collecting funds during the event category. So right now, yes, the churches would be in that Group B.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking, because I think they're considered nonprofit, and they're considered nonprofit,
Yeah.
even though they collect funds, that's to operate most of the time their churches, so.
Right, the language in that Group B is, it's all other renters that are not included in Group A, so if you're not a nonprofit, or, there's an important, or there, any nonprofit rental from Group A where funds are raised during the event. And so because there's a collection during the event, they fall into Group B.
Okay, all right. Reverend Harrison, you got a follow-up question?
Yeah, if I may offer, that may need to be broken down to a religious service
Yeah,
as opposed to a, we're sponsoring a basketball tournament.
yes, we agree
Okay.
with that. We will treat them, depending on the event, if it's the church service where they're collecting, passing the collection plate, then that would be Group B. If the church is sponsoring an after-school program or doing an event in the evening where it's a health
Yeah.
fair for the community, then they're treated as a nonprofit.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I just think we need to specify that
I'm
so
so
we
glad you
don't
brought
push
that up.
churches to say we absolutely cannot use it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's an important distinction.
Okay, yes, I just, because when I heard it, it just made me think about profit versus nonprofit, and I know churches are considered nonprofit.
Right.
Okay, next, what do we have next on the agenda? I'm sorry. Ms. Carter?
Thank you.
That's all we had on the agenda today, and I didn't know if there was any other considerations for the committee before they bring this back, or basically to talk to the board about how to proceed next as it relates to this handbook. Do we need to bring it to a board meeting to present? Yes.
Okay, yes, I was going to say that I think this, because I was looking at the draft, I think the draft should go to all board members in case they have any questions, and they can ask questions, then we should bring it back. And I also thought about this here, maybe being part of the joint board of review. I know we may not be able to do that this time, but in a future meeting, we probably should bring this to the joint board of review as well. Okay, so, Mrs. Autry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the committee had any conversations around like launching this, because it's been so long, 2001. Like, it needs some type of fanfare around it so that people know things are changing, and it's, so I don't know if there was any discussions. I think there should be some type of launch once we get to the final approved draft.
I think we would love that, because I think it's important to get this out there. The Youth Success Summit that Rachel Tecca leads, there's 70 organizations that come together quarterly, so we have a captured audience to be able to, at least to make sure the youth-serving nonprofits get all the details and get the training, which is exactly why Ms. Harper's been so helpful to get this in front of you, because we wanted to make sure we had the summer to get everyone up to speed so that the new rates are all in place for the beginning of the school year. So, but I like the idea of figuring out an event, and we'll definitely put that on the plate and work with Mrs. Outley maybe and figure something out. Some way to make it, it doesn't have to be a full-blown, huge event, but something, because this is, for those of us who've been around for a long time, we have been talking about this for years and years. So it's a moment to celebrate.
Yes, Reverend Harris.
I would just like to make sure that City Council has put eyes on it, because I'm
Yep.
sure, as with all of the board members, if something is happening, they're hearing
Yeah.
the uses. So just kind of
We already presented to City Council, fortunately.
great.
So we've done everything we've needed to do
Okay.
there under Danico Buckley-Knight and Rochelle Wardell's leadership.
Okay.
Yep. So this was our last step for the final approval.
Okay, any other questions? I think this was good. I do agree with Mrs. Autry that we should have some big launch because that'll let everybody, within the city knows that, hey, this is how you can use a CLC. Here's the sliding fairs, and we can also get out. There's different events. Hoop for Coop was past weekend. Maybe could have had someone there to talk about it. There's different events going on this summer. We're starting the summertime, and there's different events. And maybe have a booth or someone there to talk about these things as well. So everybody in the community will get a chance to know about what's happening.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Harper, you had
Yes, I was going to
Carter?
ask, is there a need to send it to JBR knowing that the council has already seen it as well? Or I don't know, whether the city, Pastor?
I know at the last JBR, it came up. So if you have been to them in between the previous one and the one Friday, I just know it came up at JBR. So
It has come up over the years at the JBR. However, if you look closely at the agreement, the responsibilities of the JBR revolve around the construction and the funds for construction, not the operation of the CLCs. And so really the responsibility of the day-to-day operations of the CLCs lies within the two bodies and a committee of citizen oversight, not necessarily the JBR. I think that the members of the JBR will be happy to learn about it. However, within their jurisdiction is not to approve something like this. It is actually in your hands.
And I just mention it because we are talking about other things that may impact. So we just want to, for my personal, I want to be as transparent and cooperative as possible because access to the buildings was a question leading to another issue that we have to resolve. And so we just want to bring everyone along and be as transparent and give everyone an opportunity, even though it's the beginning, give every entity an opportunity to say, hey, we like this. We like it, but we want everybody.
I think the formal steps have, followed in terms of approval because this handbook is yours and you get to, approve this and sign off. But then the transparency in terms of celebrating the changes, looking at any new construction projects, how this falls into it, the transparency, the handbook, that's all important, and we're happy to share that. Fortunately, all the city council got to hear this information, as well, but it would be great now that we're at the final finish line that they get a finished copy and understand the new fees.
Okay. Yes, I think that's great. And Reverend Harrison said that really good to bring it together. I think when we have not the next meeting, but maybe one of our future meetings with joint board review, the city and the school board will be there, and we can kind of do a little bit of a celebration in it. We both agree upon what's going on. We agreed upon this, and then we can move this forward. And so everybody in the city knows that we're being transparent, that we have everything in order, and now we can move forward with hopefully less issues that we were having before, then we would have hopefully those again. So that may be something we can talk about down the road. Okay, any other questions or comments, concerns in reference to, I'm sorry, Madam Superintendent?
Thank you. I was just wondering, did you have a proposed deadline that you wanted to get a response back so that we could create a timeline?
We did formally, we would like to have whatever you all need to do for the full board, which I think we were trying to get at in terms of is it the next board meeting, it goes into the packet and gets approval as quickly as we can at the next meeting or the meeting after that, just because then that will give us the chance to do the training over the summer, to shift and look at the current rentals that we have on the books and make sure they're flipped over to the new structure. That's going to take some logistics. And then everything could just be up and running for the new school year. So the next board meeting or the board meeting after would be the best timeline for us.
Okay, and I would say probably not the next board meeting, but the following, because I'd like for all the board members to be able to see this and read it, and if they have any questions, we get the answers to them, and then we can move on. So maybe by that second meeting, then we
Sure.
can have it approved, and then we can move forward, and you guys can take off from there. So
That's
that's just what I'm saying, but it's about the whole board, so everybody will have to answer in reference
That's
to that.
absolutely fine. It's
Okay.
ready, and what you have is the finished copy, so we can, that sounds great for us.
Right, okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank
And thank you all for coming this evening for presenting, and I'm not missing anyone, am I? Madam Superintendent?
Thank you. Just one final question. Because we do have a JBR coming up, would you like us to add it to the agenda? I'm just not sure when the next JBR will be, because this one was intentional for us to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I was kind of thinking not the next one because it's so quick as this week. And so to get this out this week and talk about maybe the following JBR, I mean, even if it's 4 or 5 months down the road, still we can come back and talk about it if we need to.
So you do not need to hear from the JBR before you make a decision as a board. I thought you wanted to make sure the city was okay.
I
and we
did.
could-
I did want to, but since they've already talked to the
Okay,
city,
so you're
I'm
good.
okay with
Okay,
that.
just wanted
I
to
think
make sure
if
we're
our
good.
board members are okay with that. But I just want to make sure our board gets a chance to look at it
Thank
because they haven't gotten a chance yet. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns before we have anyone else to speak? Mr. Corvia? No? Okay. All right. Well, we don't have anything else. Thanks to everyone who was watching. Thanks for everyone who came today. Thank you all for presenting to us today. And with that, we don't have any other order of business tonight. We will adjourn at this moment in time at 6:24. Thanks, everyone.